So the point of this meeting is Hercules is going to teach us everything. The end. The issue that we are looking at, I will just put up on the screen briefly, but I'll also put it in the chat. Is that one. And let me share screen. Okay. So it's this issue. Once my screen loads, there we go. Which is to create missing series alerts in Mimir. This file, I can open it up over here. So in prep for this, I have done the easy part of this, which is to say, I've copied that file into a new file in the Mimir rules JSONnet directory. That's all I've done. And opened the other two files that I know are relevant.
Okay. Great. So usually we have two cases. Sometimes we do have recording rules on Prometheus, and sometimes we have recording rules on Tenus as well. For Prometheus, they are simpler because we are usually generating a hash map containing the file name, and the file name is the key in the hash file, in the hash map containing usually an array of objects, which will end up being generated as JSON, which will be the YAML files for the recording rules. For Tenus, we do have this helper function that we ended up creating a version for Mimir, call it separate Mimir recording files, I guess. Let me check the correct name.
It's separate Mimir recording files. The original helper function was separate global recording files. That's the one that this is using presently. And the Mimir one is separate Mimir recording files, which is in recording libsonnet, recording rules, lib Mimir. And there's a test as well.
Yeah. So basically what this helper is doing is generating the recording rules per tenants. In our case, it's cluster and environment. So we have production, staging, ops, and pre as our environments. We also introduced the meta monitoring, which is the one responsible for monitoring Mimir itself. On top of that, we generate the recording rules, and the recording rules also have a namespace. In this specific case for Mimir, it takes the file name as the default namespace for the recording rule being generated. So we are taking advantage of that. So we are generating our YAML files containing the tenant name and the service and whatever type of recording rule, like saturation, utilization, in the YAML file. This way we can avoid some extra lines of code just to include the namespace in the YAML file. At first, I thought it would be a bit like hiding the information from us, but since it's already included in the helper and we have explanations why we are using this pattern, I don't think it's gonna be a problem. Since everyone opens the function to see the code, we'll understand why we are doing that. Otherwise, it would be better to include the namespace directly in the files. So, okay.
Let me stop you there and ask you a question to clarify.
Sure.
So the reason that so if I understand this correctly, and please interrupt me if I go in the wrong thing, is that we write a recording rule, but that recording rule doesn't know nothing about the tenants. And then we use this method separate Mimir recording files, which basically we do a fan out where we create many versions of that recording rule, one per tenant, right? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, good. So I understanding this then.
Yeah.
And the directory structure for this also includes service in some cases as well. So if you look at Mimir rules in runbooks, you'll see that there are all sorts of different subsets of this information, but the high level is it creates one per tenant.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's why we have the generated outcome. And what the good thing about this is that we don't duplicate recording rules. We just create one recording rule that we apply to all the tenants or selected tenants. For example, there will be a lot of recording rules that we don't want to apply to the meta monitoring tenant because it doesn't really make many sense. Apply them, but we try to be uniform and apply that to all the common tenants that are aligned with environments like production, staging, pre-ops, and so forth. Yeah.
Yeah, by default, we are targeting production and staging environments.
Correct.
And we can specify which tenants a specific service is targeting. We have that for which service we are targeting.
Both Thanos and Mimir have it set up as that. Hold on a
yeah.
second. So
That's the variable that's called the four Mimir tenants that you were in the previous file.
if you see here in the services, this is in metrics catalog services and the service name. Mimir is set up to meta monitoring, and Thanos is set up to
Ops.
Yeah, that's correct. There's another issue that's open. I did that MR. We made the change to not put all four tenants as defaults because ops and pre do not have a lot of the same things as staging and gprod. I have an issue open that is not going to happen before Summit, but will happen afterwards to add in the ones that we need back to ops and pre, which is just going through them and adding in a tenant name. But that is, yeah, so Hercules did that last week, 2 weeks ago, added the ability to actually split things up by tenant.
Okay.
This was something that was scheduled to be done after the Mimir migration when we have more time, but since like for 3 weeks straight, every single one of us was asking, why can't we filter by tenant? I just went ahead and did that because it was just generating confusion and taking energy from us just to understand why. Yeah, so if we take the recording rules from Prometheus, for example, and use this helper to generate the rules for Mimir, if we don't need to specify the services that it's targeting, then it's basically a copy paste from the Prometheus rules, and we just use this function to pass the selectors. And the work we have been doing sometimes is extracting this code, generating the recording rules to accept the selector, because most of the recording rules, they are just hard-coded, especially for Prometheus. They don't accept extra selectors as an input. So I guess the biggest part of the work is like adapting functions or extracting the recording rules to functions they accept like extra selectors just to make them filter properly the recording rules by tenants. Yeah, one pattern I have seen migrating these rules from Prometheus is that alerts, most of them we are not splitting by service because the files are the recording rules are quite small and they run quite fast because there are not many time series to query to generate them. And the others that we use for aggregations, these are the bulky, lengthy recording rules with a bunch of details, and this sometimes takes like 2 weeks just to make them work at the bare minimum state. So yeah, basically if it's an alert with just tiny PromQL generating this recording rule. We copy paste from the Prometheus rules and apply the function for Mimir, and that's it. Some of this, it took me like 20 minutes to do that, and I spent more time checking on Grafana the graphs to see if the pattern was actually matching with what we had before and what we have in Mimir than actually doing the work of porting the code. But yeah, the recording rules for Thanos and the aggregations, they take more time than.
Do you want me to go grab a Prometheus one instead of this one?
Maybe just show one of them
Okay,
just
give
to
me just a
see
second.
how complicated it could be.
Okay. Oh, come on. Why does this always take forever to load? Okay, we need one that's blocked because all the ones I suspect that a lot of these may actually still be in. Yep, that's still Thanos rules.
Yeah, maybe we can just open the JSONnet file and
Yeah.
go from there. Maybe the utilization or saturation one,
Okay.
they are good candidates.
Here's utilization. There we go.
Yeah. Yeah. So here
It's this last
we
line
need,
that the last piece here that we're talking about.
yes. So here on top of applying the separate Mimir recording files function to the recording rules, we have some other complexities that the utilization rules, they do not apply to all the services. So what we are doing here is like looping over the utilization metrics, collecting all the service names, and then applying the function per service. And we identified one case here. There is another MR open for Cloudflare service because we didn't have it. But now we do, it's just not merged yet. And because of that, there is a workaround there in the code just to create a fake service definition for Cloudflare. The soon will be extinguished. And then we have just like 2 lines of code. One to find the service definition, and then calling the Mimir helper with the code for the recording rule. And then the helper will take care of applying, like creating one file per tenant and then applying the correct selectors. Because yeah, we pass this function as the first parameter and then the service definition and whatever extra selector we want as the third parameter. So usually for the most complicated code, we need to loop over the services, or for example, for Kubernetes services, we loop over the services and filter all of them. They are provisioned on Kubernetes, and we ignore the rest, and we just apply the helper to these services. But as Stephanie and I were mentioning before, we don't need to do that for all the recording rules, only the ones that we want to split by services, which are basically the aggregations recording rules. I don't know how many aggregation recording rules we have left, but I guess not many.
Not many. Yeah, those are almost all done, and those are being done. I think Marco and Bob are plowing through a bunch of them at this point in time.
Yeah.
I think there's maybe 1 or 2 issues open left on that.
Cool.
Okay, makes sense. Let's do this. Let's do this ticket.
Okay.
Decision.
Okay, so Stephanie already copied from, is this
Yeah.
copied from Prometheus?
No, it's Thanos.
Thanos? Okay.
This issue is originally Thanos rules JSONnet. all I did was like, here, you can even say, copy. There you go.
Mm. Yeah, that's the first step. We usually copy paste from either Thanos or Prometheus rules. And what I like to do is to apply this helper function, like just copy the code. If it's not extracted into a function, I just create a function that will output this recording rule, and then I call the separate the
Okay.
binary files.
Let me add, hold on a second.
Copy
Okay.
pasting the imports is something that I do very often as well.
Yeah. So how do you normally do, like, I'm going to learn important things here. You normally just create a function to output the recording. Like,
Yeah, I try to leave the code as it is
Yep.
before doing any change. I just see if we can call this Mimir helper function without touching the code and see if it's going to generate the files correctly. And then we start from there, like changing as many things as we would like to.
So do you just actually like just essentially replace this part with this?
Yes.
I mean, copying and pasting is something I too am very good at. Except I think that I missed. Yeah.
So in this one here is interesting because the Thanos rules are already accepting a selector.
Yep.
So most probably if we do this, we need to either comment or drop the lines before, otherwise jsonnet will not stop complaining.
Oh, because this is already here?
Yeah.
You know what? I have this file. Sorry. There we go.
So
the other
on
thing that I
that.
did, which I did not actually say out loud and need to, let me open up the original file as well. The Thanos, one thing to note, I am 100% certain that Raul knows, but other people may not. The Thanos rules here has partial response strategy warn. Mimir does not accept that and will get very snotty if you forget to delete it. So I deleted that file. It'll be, it checks for it in CI, so it'll just fail your pipeline, but maybe you don't want to do that every time. So
Mimir tool will reject these recorded rules with that flag there. So
yeah. Okay.
Now you run jsonnet.
Yeah, we can run this script to generate the recording rules now and see how they will look like.
Okay.
Do you want me to just run the sonnet rules? There we go. This script, in case you haven't done this 17 times or not, is part of make generate. And it's very angry that I ran it at some point with a Cloudflare thing because it's cached. So depending on what you're working on, you get weird errors sometimes. We probably should do something to have the cache be branch related or something of that nature, but I guess it's not really that big of a deal.
Yeah, usually it's not a problem. It will just output that, okay, the cache is not available, or
right. Or in this case,
is...
it'll complain that metrics catalog services Cloudflare doesn't exist.
Yeah, but in case you, like me, were like working on 3 different MRs and changing the same file, then it could be a problem. And then you need to drop the .cache directory from the root folder.
There's also a skip. You can set, there's a feature, shell variable that you can do to skip the cache. which is, well, I mean, since we're all sitting here watching this run, like, cool, we have an error. Runtime error.
One positional
Expected
argument
one
got
positional argument, but got 3.
Mhm.
Cool.
Interesting.
Why does it? It's doing.
Well, it's complaining that separate me recording files. We are not passing the parameters correctly, but let's check the separate me recording files just to see the parameters again.
Oh, it
Okay,
wants
we
it.
have the function, the service definition. Well, the others are basically optional. We just need to provide the first one, which we did.
We have function. Is that how me?
Yeah, it should work.
Do we need to actually put the selector in here?
No. I wonder if a comma is interfering with anything. Can you go back to the terminal, please?
Yep.
Oh, it complains at line 119, but then it has other stuff there. Can you go back to the terminal again? Okay, so separate menu recording files 48. Okay, it's complaining at line 48 on the separate menu recording file. So this in this line. Okay, yeah, because we are passing a function to this helper which only accepts the selector, but we have service. Second
Definition.
parameter is the selector, and then the third parameter is the extra arguments, which are extra selectors.
Okay.
Maybe we should even normalize these names like extra selectors instead of extra arguments.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a matter of adding the first and the third parameters here, and we just ignore them for now.
So if I just add, as part of this function, if I just add, what were the, of course, I promptly forgot what they were. It's service definition and extra selectors, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Do we have an extra selector here somewhere? Yes, we do.
Yeah, but this extra selector is the selector. Let's say we have static selectors that we want to apply to the recording rules. Then we can provide the extra selector to the separate MIME recording files. If we are not providing the set of labels for the extra selector, then we can just ignore it and use just the selector.
Okay, so do I need to add extra selector here or no?
Yes.
Okay.
On this function, yes, but not you don't need to provide to separate MIME recording files, which would be a named argument here.
Okay. So run it again. Did I save this? Yes, it did. Should I rerun generate JSON
Yes.
rules? Okay.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, it worked this time. And we
Nice.
created some files. Look at that. So,
Beautiful.
Mimir, let's go into Mimir rules, gprod, and it's going to show up here. There we go, somewhere. So there you go. We have now created this file. What are some, I mean, I know what I would look at, but what are some of the things that you look at for this Hercules?
Well, first thing, if it's an unknown recording rule for me, I just take a look at how many lines the YAML file has. If it's like 500 lines, it's probably because we need to split it somehow. If it's less than 100 lines, probably we don't want to split it. But yeah, then in this case, we need to evaluate case by case if we want to split by service or not, if it makes sense, even if it's like a small file. If it has a high cardinality, if the recording rule is going to take a lot of time to run, then splitting by service is better because Mimir will just run them in parallel and they will be faster.
Just as a note, randomly plugging things from these files into Mimir occasionally makes Mimir very unhappy. I absolutely would never be the person who did that, but I did that. I did one that was absolutely unscoped and looked at essentially every, I think it was every Kubernetes, like it was about CPU throttling for Kubernetes, and apparently that was a little much. So this is showing up no data. Component ops rate. Do we have those yet?
Well, it's showing no data because you're querying Mimir and it's not in Mimir yet.
The component ops rates aren't?
I mean, okay, sorry. I thought you were just copy pasting the.
Oh, I did, but this was from Mimir. So let's go to do Thanos first and just like, where is it's just called global, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think actually the one that we're missing from this is the service component service mapping.
Yeah, I guess for Mimir, it's not working because it's still missing the monitor label. And yeah, this may break other recording rules because of that.
What is, sorry, newbie here. What is the monitor label for? What we use the monitor label?
Well, the previous setup is that we had recording rules in Prometheus and they were being applied at the monitor default. And then we were applying monitor global to the rules generated by Thanos. So we could differentiate if they were aggregated metrics from Thanos or if they were raw metrics from Prometheus.
But now we don't need that anymore.
Correct.
Yes, exactly.
But one of the problems is we have them in almost all of our recording rules. There is actually a follow-up issue that says take that all out, clean up all those extra labels. It's also the one that we'll do to handle the environment versus env as well and stop duplicating that. We're not doing it right now for obvious reasons.
Okay, makes sense.
So
I don't know which issue we were discussing about that. Maybe it's spread across multiple issues that we agreed to add this monitor equal global to the recording rules for now.
Yes.
Just while we migrate from Thanos and then we just remove them afterwards.
So as usual, the hard part for Mimir is going to be, do any of these things exist? So let me
yes, duplicate the query. No, you can do that and then check if the GitLab component service mapping is working.
Yeah, that's the part I'm almost certain it doesn't, by the way. So what I normally do, and I am certain that other people have different methods of doing this. I don't think this is going to work. Come on. Oh, great. Every once in a while, Grafana, there we go, hangs entirely, briefly, which I think Nick has found as well. I think I need.
Yeah, it happens to me too, but I think it's fixed in the next version.
Yeah. Anyways, what I normally do when I'm looking for this data is start by looking for one section, like one recording rule, see if it exists, drop any labels I think might not be there, and go from there. I also suspect that this is going to be component ops rate is probably going to be large. Except for whatever reason, this is only showing up for like logging and Sidekick over here. So I don't know. Anyways, let me do my usual thing, which is just this. Okay, so here's one query.
Yeah, something I forgot to mention before I do this comparison on Grafana, I tend to run the make validate mimir rules on the terminal, because if there is an error, it will show up there. Now it's just showing a bunch of duplicated rules because of the aggregation thing that has been merged. It's not really a problem, but yeah, maybe we can.
Why is not a problem?
The duplication of the recording rule names.
But they are duplicated, or is a false positive?
I don't know yet. In the past, there were cases I saw they were false positives because we were not namespacing it correctly, but now we do. I just don't know if they are the same. If one is overriding the other, we need to verify that, because the list of duplication is huge now.
Yeah, I was asking because Bob and I were looking at an issue yesterday about recording rules that have missing samples or missing these gaps in them. One of the reasons is that somehow the rules that we have try to append a sample to a time series with the same time stamp of the last already stored sample, which means that somehow we have messed up the rule and we have an accidental collision in the series identity, which is the metric name and the label set somehow. And that's where we have errors in Mimir reevaluation.
Yeah.
And that's where we are rejecting a lot of samples that come in for the current rules. So this is you remember, Stephanie, this is the issue you opened about.
Yep. Yeah, I'm familiar.
Thanos not being the same.
Correct.
So
I think Bob opened that issue, but regardless.
Yeah.
So we 100% do not have the component ops rate data in Mimir at this point in time. Just as a note. So I picked a poor one in that I didn't actually do any research, but I picked a good one in that this is what it mostly looks like.
Yeah, but it's fine. We can open the MR for review and then keep it blocked until
absolutely
the GitLab component ops.
Yeah, and I'll go find that. But at a really high level, that's what we need to do for each of these is update it from separate gloating. Oh, let me actually do here, maybe a good person too. And take out the other one that we don't need anymore. I deleted the extra import. But that is the really high level work to do here. I'll open this MR and I'll go find the MR that actually creates the component ones. I'm fairly certain that's one of the last ones that someone is working on. I just don't remember who.
No, but this is very useful for me because I have not time yet to work in the rules in runbooks. So it's a good intro for me to start looking at these issues.
And I am happy I'm certain that Hercules is happy to pair with people. I'm happy to pair with people too. I don't actually know what I'm doing in most of the cases, but I've messed around in this enough that I'm at least basically familiar with the pieces of runbooks. My usual suggestion is use find a lot if you're looking for files, and just keep opening new windows and reading, and eventually it starts to make sense, or you lose your mind entirely. Could go either way. Cool. I'm gonna
happy to pair if you
Yeah.
want, even if you want me just to be a Hubbard duck, because sometimes that helps me a lot. When I'm trying to explain stuff to people, I just realize what I forgot to add or to do and end up solving the problem by myself just by talking to people. So
Yeah. So I'm going to stop this recording and upload it. I will also create the MR. Actually, you know what? Let me just do that really quickly, so I have a number for the
One thing
recording.
that sometimes complicates a bit more is when we face one of the abstractions we have in the metrics catalog, because we are not familiar with one configuration or a set of metrics, and then we end up spending more time understanding why that thing is there, what are they doing, and for what reason. At least that's the biggest, like, time. The biggest part of my time is doing this part of work, because actually porting the rules from Prometheus or Tenus to Mimir, it's not a big, well, apart from the aggregation recording rules, they are big and have they are using a bunch of different abstractions. The others are quite straightforward.
So I just
Yeah.
pushed the change that we made to this MR. I'm just putting it here so that it shows up in the recording. And I put it in the chat as well. So we can go and see the 3 changes, 2 generated files and this. There you go. Cool.
Fantastic.
Okay, I'm going to stop recording.